We continue now at the top of Daf Peiches Amud Aleph and Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 88a. On the previous Amud, the Mishnah and the Brisa both discuss the various liquid measures in the Beis HaMikdash. And Rabbi Shimon says in the Brisa that the hin was not one of the 7 liquid measures because what use did it have? And the Brisa now continues. Rabbi Shimon continues, Esmi avi ta'achtav. So what do I have instead of the hin? What is that 7th liquid measure? And this is the same as we saw in the Mishnah. Elamidi yisera shel lug umechsa haisasham. There was another measure of a lug and a half that was there. Shabo hayamoded lechavise kohen gadol. They use that to measure the oil for the chavise kohen gadol, the mincha of the kohen gadol. Lugu mechsa baboker was a lug and a half in the morning, and lugu mechsa bein harboim, and it was a lug and a half in the afternoon. And the Brisa continues, Amrulo, the other Tanoim of the Brisa, they said to him, Chatzi lug haisasham, there already was a half a lug there, v'efshar l'shar b'chatzi lug, and it's possible to measure out the 1.5 lug using the half lug measure. Amar lahem, he said to them, Af l'divrechem, even according to you, Chatzi lug lo yasa, there was no point in making the half lug measure, because revias haisasham, there already was the quarter lug measure, v'efshar l'shar b'revias, so you can measure the half lug using the quarter lug. Elozeh haklal hoy b'mikdash, but this was the rule in the Beis HaMikdash. Klisha meshamish midazu, eino meshamish mido acheres. A vessel used for one amount would not be used for another amount. And some Gersos have the parentheses as the conclusion of the Brisa. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok Omer, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok says, Shenasos haya behin, there were markings on the hin for the half hin, etc. This is the same as Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Tzadok that is mentioned in the Mishnah. And the Gemara says, Mai ika bein Rabbi Meir le Rabbi Yehuda. What's the difference between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, they list the same 7 liquid measures, just one lists it from the largest measure to the smallest, the other one goes from smallest to largest. What is the difference? And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Beirutze midos ika beinayu. The difference between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda has to do with the over brim of the measures. That means the slight amount of liquid that goes above the rim of the vessel. That's the difference between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Laman damar mimata lamala, the one who lists the measures from the lower one to the largest one, that was Rabbi Yehuda. Kasavar, he holds, Beirutze hamidos niskadshu, that part that's over the rim of the vessel, that is also consecrated. Uravias Yoav le Rachmana Moshe, and therefore it was the quarter lug, the smallest measure that was given to Moshe. V'yomar le Shire, and then it was told to him to use that smaller amount to create the measures for the larger amounts. To ka'ayli lehu beirutzin, and then if that is done, so the over brim actually is contained in those other measures, and so they're all just a little bit larger. And Laman Damar mimalo lamata, according to the one who lists them from the largest to the smallest, that's Rabbi Meir. So kasavar beirutze midos lonis. So he holds that the Beirutze Midos, that overbrim, is not going to be consecrated, and so Vehin Yoiv le Rachmana Moshe, therefore it was the largest amount that was given over to Moshe, the hin, V'yamar le Shire Baha, and so then he said, measure the rest of them, the smaller amounts based on this, to Konafki Beirutzin, when you pour from the larger one to the smaller one, so then the overbrim is actually poured out, it's discarded, and therefore that would not include that little amount extra. And the Gemara continues with a second approach to the machlokas between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Abaye says, Dekuli alma beirutze hamidos. It could be that everybody agrees with regards to the overbrim of the measures. Ikol amemar niskachu. It's possible to say they are consecrated. V'ikol amemar lo niskachu. It's possible to say they're not consecrated. It's possible to say either way. That is irrelevant to the machlokas between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. V'hacha b'milayim kamiflagi. And here the machlokus is with regards to what is milayim when it says filled in the Torah. What does that mean? Man damer milmalo lamata, the one who says milmalo lamata, that's Rabbi Meir again, who lists them from the largest to the smallest. Kasavar milayim, he says that the word milayim means shalo yechsar v'shalo yoser, means it can't be any less and it can't be any more. Uman damer mimata lamal, and Rabbi Yehuda, who lists them from the smallest to the largest, milayim, when it says filled in the Torah shalo yechsar, means that it can't be any less. Avol yoser, but if it's more, milayim karina bay, that is still called milayim, there could be a little bit extra. And the commentaries discuss what exactly is the difference between Abaye and Rabbi Yochanan, because it seems like Abaye is saying the same basic idea. Abaye is saying that according to one opinion, the overbrim is considered sanctified, and according to the other opinion, it is not. And the commentaries answer that it could be the difference is, according to Abaya, in terms of whether it's permitted to overfill or not, that is a machlokas tanoim between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir would say it's not allowed, and Rabbi Yehuda would say it is. But in terms of consecration, it can go either way. And the Gemara continues, Amar Mar, the master said, quoting from the Brisa above, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Lo haya sham hin, there was no hin in the Beis HaMikdash. And the Gemara says, Shapir kamar luhu, Rabbi Shimon l'Rabbanan. Isn't Rabbi Shimon saying correctly to the Rabbanan, what would the hin be used for? There is no measurement that it's needed for. And the Gemara continues and answers, V'Rabbanan, now the Rabbanan respond, Have a hin do avad Moshe l'shemen hamishcha. There was the hin measure that Moshe Rabbeinu made for the shemen hamishcha. That was the anointing oil that was used to consecrate in the Beis HaMikdash. Tichsiv, as it's written in the pasuk, v'shemen zayis hin, it says that it was a hin, the shemen zayis, and again, that's for the shemen hamishcha, and so therefore there was a need for the hin measurement. And the Gemara continues and explains, Ma'ar Savar, one opinion holds, Kevan de l'doros lahavit sarich, lefi shahu da'avde ve'ignis, since it wasn't needed for all generations, so it was just for that moment, and then it was stored away. V'idach, but the other opinion says, Kevan da'have, since there once was a need for a hin measure in the Beis HaMikdash, therefore it was always present in the Beis HaMikdash, even though it would no longer be used. And the Gemara continues, Amar Mar, the master said, again, from the Brisa above, V'yasmi avitachtav, now what am I going to bring, says Rabbi Shimon, instead of the hin? And the Gemara asks, Lo sagid lo ma'il, is it impossible? You have to bring something else? Maybe there are only 6 liquid measures. Why does Rabbi Shimon feel there must be 7? And the Gemara continues and answers, Kedama Ravina, it's like Ravina said, Kamiri, there's a tradition, Shtei smichos betzibor, that as far as communal offerings, there are 2 that require smicha, which is leaning upon the animal. And so Hachanami here also, Gemiri, it's a tradition, to Sheva midos shalach chayu b'mikdash, that there were 7 liquid measures in the Beis HaMikdash. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Tzadok Omer, we quoted above, that Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Tzadok says, Shenasos hayu b'hin, there were markings on the hin to indicate the half hin, etc. And so the question then is, V'lesle Sheva midos, does Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Tzadok not hold that there were 7 liquid measures in the Beis HaMikdash? And the Gemara continues and answers, that's true, Lesle, he didn't have that tradition. V'ibay saying, if you want, we could say, Mai Sheva midos, Sheva medidos. What does it mean that there are Sheva midos in the Beis HaMikdash? It doesn't mean there are 7 vessels with different measures. It means there are 7 measurings that could all be within one vessel that you have these markings. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Revius Mahoisa Mishameshes, the quarter lug, what function did that have? And the Mishnah answers, Revius Mayim Lemitzora, there's the quarter lug for the purification process of the Mitzora, it's a quarter lug of water, or Revius Shemen Lenazir, and then there's also a quarter lug of oil, that's for the oil for the loaves of the Nazir who has completed his Nazirus term. And the Mishnah continues, Chatzi lug, the half lug, Mahayim Meshamish, what was the function of that? Chatzi lug Mayim Lesota, there was a half a lug water for the sota, v'chatzi lug shemen letoda, and there was a half a lug of oil for the toda loaves. And the Mishnah continues, uvelug hayamoded l'chol hamenachos, and in terms of the lug, what was that for? That was for all menachos. All menachos, they had a lug of oil. Afilu mincha shel samach isaron, even if a person would donate a mincha of 60 isaron of flour, no sein lo samach lug, so he would have 60 lug, and he would use the lug measure in order to measure out that 60 lug. He would just use that 60 times. And the Mishnah continues, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Afilu mincha shel samach isaron, even a mincha of 60 isaron, ein lo elo luga, actually it only had 1 lug of oil. According to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, even if there were 60 isaron of flour, there would be 1 lug of oil. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, le mincha v'log shemen, it says for the mincha and the log shemen, and that indicates, according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that it's always a lug of shemen. And the Mishnah continues, Shisha lapar, the 6 lug measure was used for the bull. That refers to the chatzia hin yayin, that was for the nesachim of the bull. V'arba la'ayil, and then 4 lug for the ayil, that refers to the shlishis ahin of wine that's used for the ram. Ushlosha lakeves, and 3 lug for the keves, that's the revius ahin, the quarter of a hin of wine that's used for the nesachim of the keves. And finally, shloshu mechzel menorah, there was a total of 3.5 lug of oil that was used for the menorah. Chatzi lug l'chol ner, it came out to a half a lug for every single ner, for every single lamp of the menorah. And the Gemara says, Yosef Revi v'kakashale, Revi was sitting, and he asked the following question. Revius lama nimshecha, what was the point of anointing the revius, that measure that was used to measure a revius, a quarter of a lug? What was the point of anointing that? Imitzora, if the point was for the water that was used for the purification of the mitzora, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Peiches Amid Beis.